Just one key unlocks them both. It's there at your command. Come on, people now. Smile on your brother. Everybody get together. Try to love one another right now.
Well, friends, the lost technologies and the secrets of the Crespi collections and treasure is what we're going to talk about tonight. And right away, I would suggest you go up to our website, 21st Century Radio, and take a look at some of the illustrations on the left-hand side of the page, because they are extraordinary. They really are. You'll see a pyramid with a sun over it. And we don't know how old that piece of work is, but to be found in Ecuador, of all places, in the jungles of Ecuador, and have it so similar to the Great Seal of the United States' reverse is just, well, that's quite a coincidence, a little piece of synchronicity there. We're going to be talking about Richard Wingate's book, Atlantis in the Amazon, Lost Technologies and the Secrets of the Crespi Treasure. And this was published by Inner Traditions in 2011. And the reason why I'm going to be talking about it myself is Brother Richard Wingate passed on somewhere near the end of July. And a shock to me, it certainly was, because he had looked forward to this particular work so much. But I wanted to talk about it anyway. The early 1970s were just filled with all kinds of new discoveries, and researchers were getting, they were getting more adventurous and very desirous of following up with what Edgar Cayce had to say in that time period, because Edgar Cayce, he's known as the Sleeping Prophet, and whose work is housed at the Association for Research and Enlightenment in Virginia Beach, he made a prediction on the rising of Atlantis off the coast of Bimini. Now, I remember this so clearly because we were all sitting around. There was a group of us who lived together at Savitri at that particular time. We were aware of this prediction. And believe it or not, well, you don't have to believe it or not, it's a fact. What particularly happened was in 1968 and 69, I guess you might just call it a coincidence, news stories in which Dr. Manson Valentine and others such as our dear friend and co-worker Charles Berlitz, we were very close back in those days when he was still alive. That's Berlitz School of Languages. This guy was pretty savvy. I think he could speak something like about, I don't know, it's like 50 languages or something like that. You can imagine our conversations when I only knew one language. Well, these individuals, Manson Valentine and Berlitz, a little later on, he came out with a book on and photographed this line of stones that appeared just off the coast of Bimini. And they believed at that time that they were man-made walls. And of course, skeptics, said, no way, Jose, this ain't parts of Atlantis coming up here. They're just natural little rocks. Natural little rocks, which were going in a straight line and curving. Nice little J curve there, It didn't look so natural to Dr. Manson Valentine or Charles Berlitz or many others, but, there was so much skepticism about this. And, of course, right about now, they're still struggling with it. But chances are these were man-made. These were created by man. And I think there were something like 20 to 30 feet beneath the surface of the water. But they were plainly seen if you were in an airplane. And that's what Dr. Manson Valentine was doing. And later on, Dr. David Zink also looked into it. And all of them believed at that time, and probably still do for good reason, that what they were looking at was some type of, some type of civilization that has been long gone. It wasn't necessarily Atlantis, but it could have been a small segment, a sunken colony of Atlantis. And I believe that's what Edgar Cayce was probably talking about. Now, in the early 70s, I became interested in the research and travels of one Richard Wingate, who introduced me to hundreds of his slides of the most unusual artifacts I've ever seen, taken from the Ecuadorian jungles that were in the hands of an Italian priest, Father Carlo Crespi. Well, we had lots of fun with that name, Crespi. And we really loved this man, at least I did from afar. Richard loved the man from right up front. And some of these things that we were looking at showed elephants in South America, pyramids, as well as metal sculptures that appeared to have originated in Babylonia, Egypt, Greece, Minoa, Crete, and elsewhere. I mean, what are they doing in the jungles of Ecuador? Well, if you understood Edgar Cayce and his work, they believed that that's where an outpost of Atlantis was, just like off the coast of Bimini. So that's the reason why they thought that was pretty darn important. Well, fortunately, Richard trusted me so much that he gave me scores of copies of those slides and artifacts, and they were extraordinary. Some were bronze, aluminum, some of them perhaps were even gold. And that was the very beginning of a long friendship. Yeah, friendship, I think I can pronounce that correctly. Nearly 10 years later, though, Richard Wingate's first book, called The Lost Outpost of Atlantis, that was published. And on the front cover it reads, "Deep in the jungles of South America, artifacts and art of the lost civilization have been found. Objects of strange and unusual design, totally different from known Incan workmanship, have led to an exciting and revolutionary theory of who these early Andean colonists may have been." Yep, back in 1980, 10 years after Richard and I started hanging out together and discussing stuff like this. It was thrilling. It really was. This book then was turned into a film. Now, Richard had the ability to move in and out of my life frequently because he was always traveling. He was a world traveler. He's like a bunch of my friends, Charles Berlitz, Chris Bird, Peter Tompkins. These guys were hoofing it around the planet all the time. Adventurers, looking for stuff that I just was fascinated with. As a matter of fact, during that time, I think most people were. There were a lot of little TV programs going on back in those days that, I've forgotten the name of them, but there were a whole series of history programs. They like to call them documentaries, but they were far from documentaries. They had a little bias to them, for sure. They were pro this adventure kind of stuff. So, 20 years after that particular book was published, and after it was turned into a film, Brother Richard Wingate joined us on 21st Century Radio, and that was in the year 2000. It's funny when you look back over your life, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. I mean, now it's 40-some years. 40 years of my life being involved in that with so many of these individuals who by and large, just were just great explorers. Way ahead of their time. Way ahead of their time. Well, at that particular time, Richard had learned that the waters, and this was about the year 2000, the waters in the Bimini area, in the Bahamas area, had some healing powers, and he was leading tours to that area. And here's what those tours advertised. Author-explorer Richard Wingate has discovered what is surely Ponce de Leon's fountain of youth, a fabulous white sulfur spring flowing into an ancient engineered in antiquity, 20 by 40 foot bathing pool. This is what they promise. He will guide you to it. Be sure to bring a handful of clean copper pennies when you take your swim, as the healing water alchemizes copper to a bright Atlantean crimson. Boy, I would have loved to have seen that. Now, this water is so gently powerful that it energizes even the most skeptical bather. Bahamians call it the healing hole because of its mysterious magic powers or spirits. Apparently, hundreds of visitors claimed fabulous healings in these waters, especially the local bone fishermen. And the tour included a showing of Richard's film Atlantis in the Bahamas, which revealed massive granite constructions, sunken marble buildings, and an amazing new discovery about the giant stone roadway that had never been seen by the public before. Now, as close as I was with Brother Richard, he never gave me a copy of Atlantis in the Bahamas, and now I can complain all I want. Because, when he was traveling, we didn't have email in those days. We're going to send him a postcard to the Bahamas. He'll get it. And besides, he was always scuba diving, always going underwater, always checking things out. So I knew he wasn't going to be responding to any mail that took maybe 2 or 3 weeks to get to him. It also included a chance to vision quest during a swim with the mysterious, rare, spotted dolphins. They said, quote, "Feel your soul soar as these dolphins communicate such love and affection," end quote. Now, I've always been fascinated with dolphins. Dolphins change my entire perspective of human intelligence. Because research back in the late 60s, early 70s, was indicating that the dolphins were smarter than human beings. That they had larger brains. That doesn't mean that necessarily they were smarter, but they could learn all kinds of things, and also that they were, later on we'll find out that they can be trained to do extraordinary things, especially the military used the dolphins doing extraordinary things. Well, it also, I really wanted to go on one of those tours. Unfortunately, there was no way in the world for me to do it. Not with the kind of schedule I kept during that time period, or even now. Now, in 2009, nearing our 40th year of friendship, Richard called me and said he had resolved some of the great questions about the artifacts found in Ecuador and more information on the enigmatic Father Carlo Crespi, and he needed to locate a good publisher for this important work. I turned to my and Zoe's publisher, Inner Traditions International, and just a few months ago, his book was in print. It's called Atlantis in the Amazon, Lost Technologies and Secrets of the Crespi Treasure. It's published by Bear & Company, an imprint of Inner Traditions. And in spring of this year, I was honored by the Fortean Society and elected to its Hall of Fame. I was told at that time I was the first person elected to the Fortean Hall of Fame. That was a little bit hard for me to believe. I mean, they've been around for a long time, but I guess it was a new thing, huh? Well, as I scanned back the rows of that well-attended event, back there in the very, very back of the room, I saw Brother Richard Wingate for the very last time. He appeared happy, but ghost-like. He really looked ghost-like. He appeared happy, as I said, because his book was about to come out. And in a few months, late July, he would enter the spiritual dimension, and I had hoped he would be joining me to review his new work. But although he may be here in spirit, I decided I'd want to talk a little bit about this work. Richard Wingate had traveled the world, investigating, as I noted, Atlantis and other ancient mysteries. He toured the United States and Canada, giving lectures on his movie Atlantis in the Bahamas, which he never gave me. I'm a little bit unhappy about that.